Welcome to the Naked Under the Table show, where we say what we think because we are just as naked under the table as you are. We've got nothing under the table and nothing is off the table. Our weekly golden nuggets are delivered hot and fresh by your favorite half-naked people, Martin, Denise und Elsie. Ja, guten Abend.
Guten Abend. Guten Abend, everyone. It's getting good.
You made it all the way through.
I was laughing the whole time I was rehearsing this, and I had it on a dare from my personal audience over here.
It's a very nice.
It's a very good evening. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Auf English, good evening, my ladies and gentlemen. We are here on the Naked Under the Table show. It is a very special start of this month because it is our anniversary month. So before we introduce today's episode, I just want to give a shout out to my co-hosts Martin and Elsie and to our producer Q. Here's to hitting a year, guys. Woohoo! Yeah.
Boom. And what a year it's been. Man. What a year
it has been. And for those of you who have been listening to us both on the live stream and our podcast on Spotify, Anchor FM, and everywhere else, we also want to thank you for joining us on this journey. It wouldn't have been possible without you, your wonderful debates, your super poignant questions, and how you challenge us every episode to come up with new and interesting ways to talk about things and, more importantly, topics to cover. Which brings me to what we are going to be doing this anniversary month of May. To celebrate the year that was, we are going to do one episode each from our top 5 series in the last year. And one of our top 5, in fact, if I remember, it is the top 5 series, is the Misunderstood Monsters series. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So tonight we are going to talk about another oft misunderstood monster, Snow White's evil queen. And if you haven't guessed it yet, for those of you who are listening in, I am actually wearing a tiara and jewelry because I am trying to bring out my inner evil queen as I am your powerful host this evening, guys. Woohoo! All right.
It's awesome, man. It's awesome.
I know. I really wish that people on the actual podcast could see this, but guys, if you want to see the video stream, just go on to our Facebook page, The Naked Under the Table Show, and you can catch the video recording of the live stream. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to dive in, and in the off chance that there are people in the audience that have never heard of Snow White, and as a result of which the evil queen, here's a brief background. The Snow White fairy tale was originally penned by the Brothers Grimm, and as the name suggests, the titular heroine is very, very pale, snow as white, with beautiful black raven hair and wonderful ruby red lips. So she was very, very beautiful. And the problem was her stepmother, who was the queen of that kingdom, was obsessed with beauty and remaining young. And so she became intensely jealous and very ruinative of Snow White. So she would try to ruin Snow White's life at certain points, even try to kill her, collect her heart and all of that. So we are going to be discussing how it's possible that somebody who has been known for centuries as this evil woman might, in fact, be misunderstood. So I am going to dive right in there with my first question. And as I mentioned, the evil queen's quite defining characteristic is her obsession with beauty. And in this obsession, she actually became known as kind of a biatch. Okay, so sorry for that word, but it's there's a reason why we're using that word. So in that obsession, she became a biatch. So here's my question. How does the construct of our societies, how do you feel about the widely accepted notion that beautiful women are also bitches? And how does our own society's construct contribute to this perception? do you think it's actually easier for us to forgive an evil character if they're ugly? And for this, we're going to start with Martin Johnson.
So before I answer any of this, I just want to say that when we started out all of this, we actually used to have a rule. We did drink a lot more at the time during the podcast, but if ever you said sorry, right, or you backtraced, you would have
That
to
is true.
drink.
We have to take a shot. So I'm going to ask my personal maitre d' to get me a drink because I said sorry on this podcast, which we should never do because we are open and
Right.
accepting, and I will take a swig. But Martin, while I get my drink order, what is your answer
Yeah.
to this question? I know you're delaying the answer because you're thinking
So
about it.
So, how do you feel about the widely accepted notion that beautiful women are also bitches? So, I actually thought about it, like, so I thought about this question, it reminded me of a Rick and Morty episode. Funny enough, which is they're at a wedding, Rick's best friend's wedding, third person, and they're bothering Rick because they don't think he's being nice, and he says, "Only dumb people are nice to hedge their bets." Right? So I'm not saying, well, yeah. Actually, what I'm saying is maybe the reason, if we assume that beautiful women are bitches, which I am not really assuming, but if we were, maybe that's why. Maybe they don't need to be nice, you know. So that might very well be a good reason, right? If you don't have to, why would you make the effort, right? Society's ideas and values and how they contribute to this perception. I don't really know how to classify our admiration for beauty, but it is in any case a very deep human thing, and it is also commonly known that beauty makes blind, or love makes blind, or you can be blinded by beauty, and I definitely think that tends to be the case. Maybe not all the time, but it's definitely something that happens. But it's hard because, yeah, like, I mean, the question is really how it contributes to them being bitches. Well, to this perception, it's hard. Like, we have an admiration for beauty, and it makes us disregard, let's say, other traits, or let's say personal traits. It can happen that it pushes that into the back picture, and I can't really, like, I could sit here and try to blame society or anything else, but I can't really explain why we are so caught up with beauty in all its form. Well, I can't explain it, well, because it's beautiful, but I think that's a very deep human thing.
You know, the thing is
So
also, there is a lot to be said about when you're beautiful, you can get away with a lot of other stuff. I think that's a widely accepted fact. When you're pretty or handsome, you get away with a lot of stuff.
I
So
think it's
maybe,
hard to call it a fact, but I think it's definitely a thing. Yeah.
and
Like,
so if you happen
again,
to be a bitch, maybe you can get away with it if you're pretty, you know?
so that really goes on to the next one, and that's a little bit, I don't know if easier is the right word, but it's a little bit easier for me to answer. I don't think it's easier to forgive an evil character who is ugly. I think it might actually be the opposite. That that just like you said, like, you can push these, like, some things to the background because you get blinded by beauty. Yeah, I would say that it's probably easier to forgive an evil character if they're considered, if they're beautiful.
Really? What about you, Elsie? What's your take on this notion that's pretty widely accepted that beautiful women are bitches?
Well, the 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 mean girl trope. It's pretty much a thing in this generation now. And there's also this saying that I really like. Uh, and the saying goes, "Fuck this world for confusing nice with good." So,
That's not a
uh,
bad line.
and it's to quote that, who said that was Stormfront, a pretty girl from The Boys season 2, written by Garth Ennis. And it's a great, one of my favorite characters. She is very evil, and she's incidentally German by descent. And actually, she's a Nazi. And she said that. And she said that. And she's pretty. And she's a bitch. And she gets away with things in this series. She was doing all these things, and because she's charming, she's good looking. Uh, I think back in the day, during those times, I mean, when the Brothers Grimm wrote it was pretty much, you can say that beauty was pretty much standardized. According to whom? According to the writers? According to an Aryan mindset that this is beautiful? Like, they had to describe Snow White, uh, or Red Rose, or what's her name? There's a one version that her name was Mary. I don't know. Anyways, describing her attributes to be very the standard beautiful person. It's more or less a white person, right? She's white. Kaya nga Snow White. Red lips and black hair. I think nowadays, because of the diversity and everything, and the globalization, and all these beauty contests, it's now more blurred than ever, and that's great. I think that's really great. I think that's an amazing thing, that you can actually put a stamp on the coin. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Now, when it comes to uh, the widely accepted fact that, you have that sort of attractiveness and pizzazz and whatnot, and charm, and you can get away with things. Yes, I think that comes with a lot of the facade of beauty. Uh, we have that in every aspects in life. A cute puppy will get more attention than a
You get away
less.
with a lot of things with me,
Yeah,
Elsie. I tell you
and
that.
I was actually going to jump on that because a cute
uh,
puppy that's a girl that has attitude is called a bitch. That's actually where we got the word from.
right, I was about to say that.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
So I think it's less. I think when we think about beauty and the correlation to attitude, goodness and niceness and all of that thrown together, I think generally when a person has a bad character, let's just say they're bitchy, and they happen to be beautiful, it's held against them twice as much. Oh, wow. It's almost like because you're beautiful, you have to work extra hard to be nice and to be kind. And that's why when you brought up things like beauty pageants, that's what they put forth. I'm not just pretty, I'm also kind, I'm also conscientious, I care about the world, and
Talented.
talented, and I try to be intelligent with the question and answer portion. Because if you aren't a good person, it for me actually, I feel like it's harder to forgive a person who's good looking when they're not nice. But I actually believe that if a person is not nice, but they're not that good looking, there's a part of our brain that goes, forgive them because that's all they got. you know, their
I,
attitude is all they got.
right, right, right. I know. I think there in screenplay writing, there's a rule that's called save the cat, meaning once a character saves a cat, or loves an animal, or saves a person in need, it's called save the cat. And in every fairy tale, the princess is friends with animals.
That
She
is true.
sings, and birds come in, and that's already an attest of her character. Oh, she's
Yeah.
nice.
And in Snow
She's
White, that's
nice.
not just one man; it's all the animals of
It's
the
All the
all
entire
animals.
the
forest.
It's all animals.
and
Yeah.
all the animals. They're in love with Snow White. They're in love with her,
And
and
that's the other point. Snow White is actually, the premise of the story is Snow White is also beautiful. In fact, she is so
right,
beautiful
right.
that she
But
threatens the queen. And
right.
so I think, that is a very, very important thing to note as we move along this discussion, is that when we talk about the notion of beauty together with attitude or evilness, as it were, I think they get muddled together very, very basically in our heads. A
Uh,
pretty person or a good looking person that's nice is a
mm,
hero, but a pretty person who's evil is almost virtually
mm,
unforgivable. And in fact, apart from beauty, there were other juxtapositions between the evil queen and Snow White. We mentioned kindness. So one was kind, the other was evil. One was innocent, the other was blameworthy. And another glaring juxtaposition, actually, between Snow White and the evil queen is their disparity in age. So here's a question I have for you guys. How different do you think this story would have turned out if Snow White and the evil queen were the same age? How do you think this reflects also about our views today on age? And we'll start with the youngest on this one. We'll go with Martin for this. I'm curious what he has to say.
So,
hold on.
how different
You're
do
the
you think?
youngest? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
man.
I
So
didn't know that.
I
I thought I
feel
was the youngest.
I
Oh,
I feel the
man,
jealousy, man. I feel the jealousy
man.
every
Hold
goddamn
on.
Monday. That I can
My
carry it on my shoulders is just unbelievable,
my
really
my world
unbelievable.
is shattered. Hold on, my world's spinning. I thought I was the youngest. My God.
Yeah, you want to be. Ooh, you see an
Um,
evil king in the making. Sorry, Marts, go ahead.
it's actually a really good question, and I thought a lot about it. Because my initial thought was that H um like the main play between the two is jealousy. Well, at least from the evil queen's side, like she's jealous of Snow White. Snow White is technically everything that the evil queen want to be, and the evil queen in this story does everything she can to make Snow White something else. Like she tries to force her to wear rags. She forces her to clean the castle. Like she gives her all the shit jobs. And this stupid girl, she just dances around anyway. She just dances around and fucking cleans and sings and all the birds. And so there's a big
So
jealousy. So
actually, we've got
my initial
I,
two
I think animals
stereotypes.
were helping her clean also, so that she
Yeah,
had
now
help.
we've got
She had help.
two stereotypes actually. The evil queen is beautiful but bitchy, and Snow White is pretty but dumb. Just kidding. Just
no,
kidding.
I won't. Yeah, but she's definitely naive. But that also comes with age, right? Being young and being naive does go hand in hand. So of course there's a spectrum of naivety, right? But in this case, in this story, it really plays a big factor because Snow White, uh, like I mean, is actually really naive and eats of the apple. And some versions of the story, some of the older ones, she actually almost get killed 3 times,
Yep. Yep.
right? So that definitely plays a factor. But to come back to the question, so in the beginning I was gonna say, well, it's jealousy, and it comes from, let's say, a bitterness. If you are a bitter person, it has a tendency to accumulate over time. So my first thought was, well, that was a big factor, and then I was like, but what if they were the same age, right? Which the question implies. Would she then not be jealous? Right? It would probably be a different jealousy, but it would still be jealousy, right? It would still be jealousy. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the values portrayed in the two characters and the jealousy that spins from those two positions, where on one hand you have the effortless, let's say, popular and loved person, and on the other hand you have a person that wants all of that, puts in so much effort but just never gets it, and it kind of becomes also it becomes a female version of the Cain and Abel story, right? um so I don't know if it turned in any different if they were the same age. I think jealousy would still be a problem. I think the values between the two, I think it would still be the same game, but obviously age would just not be a part of it. And they will probably be more in direct rivalry, where now the queen is kind of like from behind, and like she kind of like spins it from the back seat. There'll probably be more of a direct rivalry. Um,
I find your perspective so interesting, especially this concept that any attribute that we have, positive or negative, does grow with age. And so, if we were to imagine that they were the same age, let's just assume both young, then whatever jealousy the evil queen was feeling wouldn't have been as big and as compelling as it was when she was older. And maybe that would also have affected the way she treated Snow White, in that she wouldn't be as evil either as she ended up being because she would be young, you know?
but if you look at the Cinderella story, right? Is it Cinderella? With the one where she gets the shoe, and that's not
Yeah,
Cinderella
Cinderella.
is the one that sleeps, right?
Yeah,
Sleeping
that's
Beauty,
Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty. Yep.
Okay, so Cinderella was the right one. She has sisters, step sisters, funny enough. And that would probably be more of the rival. As I said, like I would see it more as a direct rivalry, where this version, she's very like trying to be raised above, not trying to be raised above her actions, but she's sort of raised above because of the age, so she is kind of manipulating everything from behind, and trying to trick Snow White, and turning herself into the hack, right, trying to trick Snow White. Whereas if she had been the same age, I would have seen the rivalry probably a little bit more like the one in Cinderella.
I mean, for all you know, the prince would have had to choose between two of them. He'd be like, "Oh man, there's two of them good-looking chicks. What do I do?" Right? I
Oh.
mean, the other one, yeah. But what about you, Elsie? What do you think would have happened? Would the story have changed drastically if the
Well,
queen and the evil queen and Snow White were the same age?
uh, I think it's gonna be a Mean Girls a Mean Girls Part Two, either that or an Archie Comics issue. It's gonna be Betty and Veronica,
Daddy and Veronica. That's a really good analogy for what it would have might been like. Yeah, yeah.
right? But probably you can speculate that the queen, of course, was once young and beautiful, and she still is now beautiful. Oh, fun fact: Disney originally drew the queen fat and ugly.
Ugly. Yep. Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, but they had to change it because to get contrast to juxtapose her change to a old hag. Well, anyways, I think it's gonna be an interesting story when they're both young and pretty. But of course, character will play another part. I don't think the evil queen will have uh animals at her side and helping her clean or helping her do anything. Snow White will have animals, and she'll have that a test of a better character. And yeah, it's gonna fall into. You're right, Martin. It's gonna s- it's gonna be very similar with Cinderella, which is she has sisters
And the
who more or less
stepsisters.
her age. Yeah, more or less her age.
And and
Uh,
and see, that's an important point too when you think about it, because in Cinderella's case, although we're talking about the evil queen here, but just to digress a little bit, in Cinderella's case, while she had evil stepsisters, the real villain in the story was the older stepmom, and we'll go back to
mm,
some on that later. So
mm,
I feel that had the evil queen in Snow White been younger, she wouldn't also have been branded as that big of a villain. I think people would have
maybe,
not taken her so
maybe,
seriously, would have not been so afraid of her.
maybe.
And this is why I wanted to connect the same question or a question to this, where how do you think this
But
reflects? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
so I have a question, because I really liked what you said, Denise. So do you think that do you think she, because I actually agree with what you said, like she might not have been considered as evil. Like if you look at the evil stepsisters, for example, you don't consider them as evil as the evil stepmom. But that is also, does the fact that they are more experienced, therefore more knowing, therefore less naive, make like does that give them a bigger responsibility? Right, because if you are competing, like if it's young boys or young girls, let's say competing, maybe you have more of like oh yeah, but they're young, like they don't know any better. But when you have the age aspect, you
You
do
expect
like
them to know better, right? And to your earlier point, part of the reason why Snow White fell into all of these quote unquote traps was because of the naivete that comes with being young. And so maybe the story would have unfolded quite differently because even the queen herself not just would or should know better, but might not have had the experience to combat Snow White or manipulate her in the same way that she did
to
later on
manipulate her
in
that
her
way.
life,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, that's a good
Could
point.
could
That's a
be,
really good point.
So how do
could
you
be.
think this connects to our concept of age differences today? Do you think people older have a larger responsibility to be kinder and less evil? Are we supposed to now see a disparity in age as an excuse for certain kinds of behavior?
I think as we age, we're becoming more frank. Hence the term "old farts," and you can say I'm getting there. Once when you
What are
reach a
you
certain
talking
age,
about, man?
once you reach a
You
certain
got to be
age,
older
man,
than
it's just
22 for that.
yeah. I'm
And
feeling
he
it. I'm
penny dropped,
feeling it.
ladies and gentlemen.
I'm
And
feeling it. And and I'm telling you, patience just you just less your patience gets lessened and lessened as we age, and you just less of the bullshit. You just don't want to deal with it anymore, and you just say what you want. You want what you feel. And that's
that's true
more or less
because
we're becoming.
and this is an important. I love that you tackled that because what's to say that the evil queen was just very blunt? She just didn't use,
Right,
she didn't sugarcoat
right,
things. She didn't use nice words. She was just like, I just want to do stuff, get it over with. I don't like you. I need to be the prettiest.
right,
And I'm not going to be nice about it and beat around the bush because I'm too old for that shit.
right, right,
And it's
right,
possible that,
right.
people just said, oh, you a bitch because you all like that. But really, to Elsie's point, sometimes when you're old, you just you cut away the niceties. You do away with these things, because it's just too much effort
I
and
think
you earned
I
your
think the
right to
evil.
be grumpy. Yeah. Haha, did you
Right.
see what
I
I did
think
there?
I
You
think
earned
See
your
what I did
right
there?
to be grumpy.
You see what I did there?
I think the evil queen was just being honest. What's her name again? Denise
Well,
Grimhilda.
we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's not
Grimhild.
get ahead of
and
ourselves. Yeah. But yeah, maybe
and
she was.
and yeah, she was just being honest. And well, I guess that town is so small. I don't. So I'm guessing that there's not much people. I mean, if there's only two pretty people there, two attractive
I mean,
women, and one's
I only saw a
and
couple
one's a
of birds and
teenager.
a mirror in there.
Right, right, right. Oh, fun fact. Sorry, Denise, I'm gonna derail a bit. I just want to add this fact. I just recently found out there's a Mandela effect in Snow White, right? People think it's always mirror, mirror on the wall. That's what they heard, but it's actually magic mirror on the wall.
Yes, it is Magic
Who's
Mirror on the Wall.
who's the
Good job,
favorite? Who's
Elsie.
the?
That if we
It's
still had our trivia of the night this evening, I think that would
right,
have been a
right,
good
right.
trivia of the night. But
It's
we will
magic
not
mirror on
have
the wall.
tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we will not have a trivia of the night. In fact, tonight we are going to have another game that you on the live stream can participate in, and I'm hoping you will be willing participants because for our first year anniversary month, we are opening up a section of the podcast that we are calling the AMA section or Ask Me Anything section. So you can ask a question to either me or Elsie or Martin on the comments of the live stream, and our producer Q will pick one later on for one of us to answer. So if you guys have any burning questions you've been waiting 12 months to ask, now is the time to do so.
Like
But
Elsie's age.
like Elsie's age, real age, no lying.
Uh, I'll
All right.
tell you now. 29.
All
I'm
righty.
I'm a, I admit it.
Oh my goodness. You can't say sorry on this podcast and you sure shit shouldn't lie either. So this guy should take 3 shots.
What? What?
Okay. But for serious, I do want to take it back to something that Martin touched on earlier, and even Elsie touched on earlier, we were comparing different fairy tales, and we did bring in Cinderella there, because we were essentially comparing the stepmother of Cinderella to the evil queen of Snow White. And incidentally, in the more popular version, the evil queen is a stepmother. But in the original Brothers Grimm version, the evil queen was actually Snow White's biological mother. She was
Whoa.
changed to stepmother in all the later versions of the story so that it would be easier for people to hate her.
Hate her. Hmm.
My goodness. So my question
I
is,
think. I,
yeah, go ahead, Elsie.
no, sorry. I was just gonna. I was just gonna say if they stuck to the biological aspect, that would be even more evil, right? That's like evil, evil.
And
I think
exactly, I think
that will.
people would have a hard time
Mm.
deciding if they wanted to hate her if she was a biological mother, and it made
I
it
think
easier
people will
for
even
people to
hate her
hate her.
more.
Yeah, so it was
Okay.
easier for them to hate her because she wasn't biological. I don't think,
Mm.
meaning there was no struggle. Because if she was a biological mother, there would be a struggle if you wanted to hate her or not. And if you arrived at the hate, then you'd hate her more. But it wasn't as easy to hate her as a biological mother.
Mm.
And it brings me to the point. There are so many
Mm.
fairy tales where stepmothers are always the bad people in the story. So
Mm.
how do you guys feel about
Mm.
stepmothers always getting a bad rap? Like, is this fair? And this happens in life too. How do you guys feel about that? Elsie, I'll start with you since you already have some opinions.
Well, yeah. I guess you can say that the inclination of the non-biological inclination would be a fact there. Of course, you have more natural instinct to love someone of your blood. Yet again, we're talking about the Middle Ages when and the setting of the stories where all most of the time are Middle Ages, and during that time, I think they were just selling their kids. It was commonplace if you were not that happy with your kid or you're poor or what, you can just sell your kid. Hansel and Gretel, they were
Really?
biological
Was
parents.
that not just like a story thing, or was that like normal? You could sell your kid?
I mean, you can
I
still
would
do
think
that.
so. You can still do that. I think in some, probably, I hope not, but I think in some less fortunate
Uh,
countries,
Man,
even
it's
here
done
in this country.
all over the world. Yeah. So
I mean,
that's definitely still
yeah,
something that people do.
right, right. So yeah. I mean, the stepmom trope. That's also a thing. It's in movies. All It's up to this day. It's still there. The stepmom trope. Uh, I guess it's a good target for a antagonist. If you're gonna create an antagonist in a story, a stepmom is a pretty good target. We need to get that character to be not biologically connected, and thus we can make her a more evil person because it doesn't
Why
have that
though? Why
inclination
did
of.
the stepmom naturally make it easier for them to be, you know, typecast as evil?
Yeah,
Martin,
because
did you have,
if it. Oh, go there. Go
yeah,
ahead, Martin.
because I want to,
Um.
yeah, go ahead, Martz. Yeah.
So so this is gonna get a little bit dark, but I'll go ahead anyway. I think so. So when you say easier to hate, I do agree because it becomes less horrifying. I think that having to deal with the fact that a person could do something like that to their own child is just too much
I
to process.
I totally agree with you,
and
Martin.
and
I totally agree with you. I think they
and I
had to
think that
tone down it. They had to tone down the stories. It was too heart wrenching for someone to give away or kill or try to murder your offspring. That was, but again, in Hansel and Gretel, they were the parents. It was their
uh,
biological mom that tried to kill them.
Yeah.
or lose them in the forest, right? It was more.
So
You're right. It was more grim.
yeah, and on one hand, like, because if we're talking about the Disney version, of course they need, it needs to be marketable as well, right? That's again the fact that it is easier to hate the stepmom because making it the mom would make it so much more horrifying and very hard to relate to, I think, right? That's just my position on it. But although that makes sense to me, um like these, like a lot of these stories that are told were not told as fairy tales. They were told as it was a way of passing knowledge,
It
of
was like a
passing
cautionary
values.
tale, even, right? Like some of them were cautionary tales.
uh,
And we'll talk more about
Warning.
that later. But one cautionary tale is don't be too naive, because
yeah,
you end up like, yeah, exactly. I
Don't
agree.
don't don't trust strangers. Don't trust
but
strangers who have red apples.
but in this case, it does happen today. It happened at the time that these stories were prevalent. There are parents that do horrible, like incredibly horrible things to their children all over the world, and and
Right.
I think cutting that, like, I think there's too much of a taboo around that kind of problematics, or
Right.
those kind of problems.
Right. Right.
So in one way, I understand that it becomes easier to hate the evil queen, and I do think, to agree, I do think that stepmoms catches some unwarranted bad rep on that account. But I also, so it's like, it makes the story more relatable, but it also, like,
I
makes it
think I
not,
think it's easier
like,
to
not deal
digest.
with
Right.
very
Right.
real but
Dark.
very
Right.
horrifying things. So yeah, and in that case, maybe they were more
Yeah.
honest
I
back in
totally
the
agree.
day.
You're right. You're right, Martha. I totally agree. I think most of the stories, Hans Christian Andersen, Brothers Grimm, when it went to the mainstream, when Hollywood got a hold of it,
They softened it.
Disney in particular, they softened it. It was
Mhm.
just more grim, diba? Quote unquote. It was they had to tone it down. It was just too horrific when you think about stuff like that. Like if the queen was her mom and plotting against the murder of her own daughter, that would be more horrific. And going back to the previous question, I think you'd hate her more. I think giving us putting her in a position of a stepmom softens that blow, and it softens for kids to watch. It's easier to digest for the masses rather
Yeah,
than
imagine you watch
something
that
that
and you sit
horrific.
as a kid, like 4 years old, and then you just look over. They didn't do the stepmom thing.
Right.
You're just watching it, like the mom trying to kill her
Right.
child on
Yeah,
television,
yeah.
and you're just looking over at your mom, going
You know
like,
what?
"What the
That's
fuck?"
true.
You know what?
So I
You
have
know
I have
if you sorry, Denise, if you were the queen, sorry, if you were the queen, why don't you just take her to an orphanage? Why do you have to kill Snow White? Just take her to an orphanage, emancipate her, right? Take her to another country.
no,
You're
because the point is
rich.
she'd still be
Take her to
alive,
another
right?
country.
The point is she'd still be alive, and so long as Snow White was alive, she
In
wouldn't
in
be
another country.
the fairest in
Take
the
her.
land. So she had to kill her. She had to kill
I'll,
her. But I do
I'll
have a
if I was the
perspective on
queen,
this.
I'll ship her to the Philippines. I'll ship her here.
She'd still be alive
Ship her
though.
to
But
Manila. Let's see how she fares.
all
She'll
right,
be
so
probably an
I think
artista. She'll become an actress.
so. My answer to this question, I think, will be interesting to both of you, especially because one of you is a nihilist and one of you is an atheist, and so I have a funny feeling that the reason this was done that way and you made the evil
Hey, that's
woman a
both me.
stepmother is because there were a lot of Christian undertones to stories like this. And if we hearken back to the Bible, Christ had a stepfather, but he didn't have a stepmother. He had only one mother, Virgin Mary. And she was irreplaceable, irrefutable, infallible. and she was the quintessential definition of all that is good. So you cannot now make a Christian belief, which is the Holy Mother, somebody evil, and propagate that in story form for predominantly Christian believers. It would just be sacrilegious to a degree. All mothers had to have this veil of goodness and innocence and protection that was sacrosanct, that was untouchable in so strong a manner that you weren't able to make them evil. And while, yes, I agree, there is some palpability there that we're talking about, like to imagine that a mother could do this to her own child is quite jarring, and it's already hard to wrap your head around. But I really think it's because there was this holy mother concept that propagated throughout history. And mothers were considered these pure holy things, especially biological mothers. And it allowed for an avenue of stepmothers to become evil, and that's where I think it comes from. Now, I may be wrong,
But
but I do feel that it it also kind of bolstered the concept of a holy mother by keeping all biological mothers saintly, because in all the stories where there's a stepmother, the biological mother was kind and innocent and meets an untimely death. She's preserved in her goodness and purity for the rest of the story, untouchable. And I think that's part of what was going on there.
this is definitely not the case in the Grimm stories.
It definitely isn't, which is also
Yeah.
why I feel like the Grimm stories were almost these underground kind of cultish stories that you would read. It's funny that they're called fairy tales, but they were never meant for children. They were meant for adults of a particular persuasion. And it's interesting because when they, to Elsie's point, had to be mass produced, certain liberties needed to be taken in order to make them a lot more, I guess,
Digestible.
digestible. Exactly. But super interesting
And I think
concepts.
and I think and I think fairies should be telling the story. That's why it's called a fairy tale. I'm sorry.
Maybe the
What can I
Brothers
say?
Grimm were fairies. We never
Tinkerbell
know.
is gonna
We'll
Tinkerbell is
never
gonna
know.
get flying like, hey.
She is. She's
Sorry,
like,
that's not a
"Let me
fairy.
tell you the
That's
story
a
of."
sprite. That's a
That is true.
sprite.
And maybe we can cover that in another episode that we can distinguish different kind of mythological creatures. But going back to the evil queen, Elsie almost gave it away earlier, but it's a good thing I was able to catch
Oh,
that.
sorry.
Yeah, and it's okay. It
Sorry.
happens. It happens. And this is an interesting tidbit for, I'm sure, many people, not just our listeners today on the live stream or on the podcast. But did you know that the evil queen actually has a name? Her name is Grimhilde. So Grimhilde. Not many people know that, and honestly, not many people care about that. I find this interesting that
Yeah.
her name was removed after the Brothers Grimm's versions, and throughout the rest of the retellings of the story, she was just known colloquially as the Evil Queen. So, my question is, how do you think this removal of her name reflects upon society's tendency to remove our identity and brand us as generic, often nasty stereotypes? Martin?
Ooh. So first of all, or first thing, not, yeah, is is there any other versions of the story other than that are not built on the Disney version? Like it's a Disney version where it
Yes.
gets changed, right?
Yes.
So basically any story where this is the case is built upon the Disney narrative, right?
No. So
Which
basically, for some reason, and no,
mm,
I think there is a reason why. In all the other retellings of the story, she's not called by her name anymore. She's just
mm.
called the Evil Queen. And
So
I'm wondering how that's connected to our tendency to remove identity and just
yeah,
give us stereotypical branding.
yeah. So again, I don't know if there's a if there I don't know. I don't know enough to kind of like draw the parallels, but it does definitely seem like these, let's say, if not directly Disney narratives, but at least these these more modern versions of fairy tales are less direct than, for example, the fairy tales or the stories of the past. Um, but in terms of the actual question, right? It's for me that's straw manning, right?
That is the
It's
term.
plain
Yeah.
straw manning, and I think that's horrible. But I also know that that's something that we all do from time to time. It's like it's like a it's like a very horrible way of like arguing, right? When you just take whoever, whatever you're arguing against, you strip everything that's basically good, any type of personality away from them, and just brand them like this is what you are, and this bam bam bam, this is why you suck, this is why you're a horrible person. It's basically straw manning, and I do think that's horrible. And I know it's hard, even for me or even for anybody, not to do that. Like you really have to practice, and you really have to be patient, not to strip away the people you have a conversation with, for example, or your opponent or your enemy, even not to strip away their human side or their personality, and not just brand them something evil, or something bad. So all, I don't agree with it, but I also don't see how we would get rid of it. Like it's really something that's really really difficult. And yeah, I have a hard time to kind of see how we would get completely rid of straw manning, but I definitely don't like it.
Mm.
I think it's funny because we
Mm.
do this not just to the
Yeah,
character,
it's
the evil queen. You know, we
Mm.
have tropes like the dumb blonde, and not even the evil. We have the evil genius, the mad scientist, and we completely strip away their name on purpose. You know, and it's because it's almost like we don't want them to have defining characteristics apart from that stereotype that we
Yeah, or
impose on
the
them.
evil capitalist, right?
Yep. Yep.
The naive socialist. Like it's basically in every aspect of
Of
arguments or
society.
human
Yeah.
intercourse. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Exactly. What about you, Elsie? How do you feel about this tendency for
uh,
society to strip a name or an identity and brand each other with stereotypes?
I think it's more of a. I think it's more of categorizing, and that's one thing that society has to do. It's something that we have to, I guess, have in for some sort of order, some sort of uh, knowing where you are, what's your place. We have to categorize, and it's bad. You're right. It's not always good. But going back to the queen, I guess when in a story based situation like what how the Brothers Grimm wrote it, it's more of a I think back in those days they didn't think it was that important to have a name. So, but now it's changing. It's pretty much changing in the side of movies and pop culture and all that. It's not as prevalent as before. Now we need to have. It's more of a why now than a how, which is great. I mean, Disney just did the Maleficent movies, and it was awesome. I found it great that they had to put layers. Now Maleficent has layers. It's a cause and effect. Maleficent is evil because there is a reason to the madness, and that's great. And I think it goes back to our old episode about truth. Sometimes we when you what is bad and good when you think about that, there must be a reason. Well, if you rewrite Star Wars, Snow White in the modern age, you can probably put layers in Grimhild. And speaking of which, Grimhild, Grimhilda was actually based on an actual actress. Her name was Helen Douglas, and Helen Douglas. was an amazing woman. She was actually the first Democratic woman elected to Congress. So it's an amazing woman. If you base that on someone like her and put those implications of oh, I have to make the right decisions. I have to do a painful decision that will cause a lot of pain, but for the greater good. And most villains nowadays in pop culture are that. One of which is one of my favorites is the Kingpin in Daredevil. How
Mm.
D'Onofrio wrote him,
Gave him
how
color.
played
Yeah.
him,
Yeah. Gave him
gave
color.
him so much color and gave him reason. You understand. Another famous villain now is Thanos. You understand why he's doing it. And again, going back to Disney, Maleficent. You understand where she's coming from. And I think that's great. It's not a one-way streak anymore. And I think that's supposed I think I'm hoping that sooner or later stereotypes would get blurred and to obscurity, and we would actually see more of what really goes on, right? We'd see clearer.
And you're right.
We would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
think,
Go ahead, Denise.
you touched on it earlier when you said it's not about the how anymore. In today's literature, or not just literature, in today's storytelling, we do like to focus on the why. And it actually dovetails very nicely into my answer. But before I do that, I want to read out a nice comment from one of the live streamers. Van says, I think people remove names so they will not be associated with real people's names. That's possible too. In point of fact, you mentioned that Grimhilda was based on a real person. But I think the reason this was a literary device used is because then you don't have to dig deep into why she's become evil or why she is acting the way that she is. You can just accept it as fact because she's not a person, she's a stereotype. And in fact, the two combination of words
Right.
makes her very unrelatable. Number one, she's a queen. How many queens are there in every particular kingdom? One. So she's definitely unrelatable, and I can't sympathize or empathize with her in that respect. And then you layer on the adjective of her being evil, and you just accept the fact that this is not somebody I am meant to understand. By removing her name and stereotyping her, you create this orientation for the readers or for the watchers or for the listeners. You don't need to understand why she's the way she is. Just accept that she is the way she is and
Right.
she's not a good person and she's bad and you can't relate to her anyway because she's a queen and all of that jazz. And I think when we bring it back to
What
the intent of my question, we do that today all the time. When we don't have to bear the obligation of having to understand somebody, get to know somebody, or find a possible justification for behaviors or words that we don't like, we start stereotyping them. It's a default reaction we have as human beings so that we don't have to be human beings. Because as we stereotype, we likewise dehumanize. And this is where Vanessa's comment kind of plays into it. If it's not a real person's name, it's not a real person. And if it's not a real person, then I don't have to give a crap about this real person. It's just a stereotype. And it's easy for me to move on and say, yeah, let's just hate the girl. And I think
And
we have, yeah, go ahead, Marks. Yeah.
I think the even more dangerous part of that is that uh, because you can't relate to her, you don't realize that that could be you.
Or you don't want to
And
realize that that could be you. It's scary.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it
that's a
reminds
great point, Martin. That's a great point. Yeah.
yeah, because for you to
Yeah.
really for you to really I don't know, it's trying not to assume too much. For you to achieve real depth, you have to realize your capacity for evil.
And
And
evil is a slippery slope. It is a slippery
and
slope. Yeah.
and how all of these things are a reflection of yourself. And if you don't try to understand it, which is what happens when you strawman people, right? You basically disengage from them, and associate everything, like you don't associate with them at
You
all. You basically
disassociate, actually, in
exactly
point of fact.
exactly
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very dangerous, because that's really how you end up. And I can only talk about, like, I found a cool perspective. Actually, this was on the Second World War, and I found it very cool in the way that you are not, like, when you talked about, like, thinking about the horrors of the Second World War, for example, the extermination camps, what a lot of people would do would be try to imagine how it would be to be a prisoner in an extermination camp, or in a concentration camp. But what not a lot of people do is imagine how you would be the
Yourself.
guard.
Yeah.
How would you be the guard there? The guy that pressed the gas button, the guy that loaded those trains that took them there, that got them out of the ghettos. Like, people don't try to think like that, and you have to. I really be think that you have to. So, in any case, yeah, I really agree. It straw manning just doesn't end anywhere good. You have to be able to realize that could be you.
And there is a certain kind of temptation to do that because it just makes quote unquote relating to other humans easier, even though what you're
Yeah,
actually doing is detaching yourself from those relationships.
yeah, and it makes you not, like, you don't have to deal with your own shortcomings, right? It makes
Both if
makes
you relate
yeah.
to them or as you don't relate to them. That's very
Mhm.
true. So we've been talking a lot about her evilness, even her obsession with beauty. And there's another facet about the evil queen that is not normally talked about in terms of the story, but I think is a very important point. And that is the idea that the evil queen, apart from being rich, was also very powerful. In fact, she was known to wield magic like nobody else in the land. She was unbeatable in terms of casting magic. And yet in this story, both
She used to do birthday parties. So that's what I heard. She used to do birthday
yeah,
parties.
she was booked
That's how she
solid,
got.
man.
That's how she got better. That's how she got
That's
really
how she made
good.
her money. No, just kidding. um, but this is what I find funny in the story. She's supposed to be this all powerful being, and yet when she decides to cast her most powerful spell, she ends up turning into this ugly hag who is maniacal and deranged and all of these ugly, decrepit things. And for most people that may not have known, this is actually considered a very strong metaphor for warning women against trying to attain too much power. So I want to ask the boys this. How do you guys feel about certain concepts like these that have shaped the way we see other women in power today?
If I was the queen, I would just turn Snow White ugly. That'll solve all your problems.
You know what? That is a brilliant solution.
I mean,
That
you're
is
all
brilliant.
powerful. I can actually turn anyone into a hag. Why not turn Snow White into a hag? Make her make her grow some horns or something. She loves animals. I'm gonna turn you into a half human, half deer, half
Man,
rabbit hybrid,
you would write
and let
the shortest fairy tales of all time.
the the end winner,
And you know
Queen
what's ironic?
Grimhilda.
You know what's ironic? It goes back to this question I just asked. Because technically, if that was the story, it goes back to, oh, if you're too powerful as a woman, you do all these nutty things, like turn people ugly. But I mean, like, I feel personally that thankfully today, women in power are not as rejected or not as feared or prohibited anymore as they used to be. I mean, it was only a few decades ago when if there was a woman CEO in a company, there were only two reasons why she was a CEO. She's unmarried or she's a bad mother and she wasn't fulfilling any of her womanly duties, right? And now, at least in our time today, women in power are not getting that level of judgment and compartmentalization. But
Hmm.
do you guys
Hmm.
feel that we still have a perception of women in power that we feel literally and figuratively, power can corrupt women in such a way that they turn maniacal and deranged?
I think I feel it's less. I don't know. I just don't trust men. I think the world would be a better place if it was run by women. World wars would be fought by gossip.
That is
It's a
true.
gossip war now.
That is true. Yeah. And the EU would have been like, you can't sit with us. You can't be part of the EU. You know?
In the
And that's
UN, there's a mean girls table, and the cheerleader table in the UN building. I think that would be a better war than
I don't
actual
know. I'm of
war.
the
You know?
impression that would have been 10 times worse. How about you, Mark? Do you think our perception of women in power has changed at all? Or is it still kind of carrying these kind of old world archaic views about women in power getting maniacal and deranged and corrupted?
Mm, I think power corrupts anybody. Or it doesn't corrupt anybody, but it can corrupt anybody. I think power is a very difficult thing to handle. And it just power just corrupts. Not, as I said, it's not that everybody gets corrupted, but it does definitely
Anyone?
carry that element. Uh,
Yeah.
in terms of the stereotype against women in power, um, I don't know. It depends. Like one question is, how did you attain the power? That's always a big question, and it's a bigger question than whether you are a man or a woman. But obviously, regardless, sometimes people tend to strawman people in power. I think that's very very common, and put stereotypes on them. And I think that's definitely still prevalent today, and also probably in a big case also against
No,
women.
I think much more so. I think people of power, women or men, should be in a microscope. Should be
Mm.
focused on that, because it again. We have to have this, especially in this country. I'm saying this now. Uh, Power is not a privilege. It's a responsibility. It's nothing to be. It's not something you can wield like magic. It's not. It's a responsibility, and you will be criticized. You will be carrying a burden. You will be carrying a cross, so to speak, and that's supposed to be how things. I think it should be like that, and that's what a lot of people are missing, especially in this country. We're missing the point. I think all these powerful people wield it as magic, wield it as as a privilege, and that's what makes power corrupt. Absolutely, absolute power corrupts absolutely because of that mentality. If we
But
change that
I will
mentality
say,
and
guys,
make
in fact,
you
not so long ago, there was a wonderful ad run by Pantene that compared labels that we apply to women in power versus men in power. When a
Mm.
man is a boss, he's a boss.
Mm.
When a woman is a boss, she's bossy. When a man can speak very well and convince people, he's persuasive. But a woman can do it and she's suddenly called pushy. When a guy stays at work late, he's dedicated. When a woman stays at work late, she's selfish. When a man takes care of his
is it
body
up
and
to
he
now?
looks, he's neat. And when a woman does, she's vain. And I really feel that
Up
just as
is it
there
it's
are,
it's does it still happen?
I think so. I think
Up
honestly, we're
Really?
making moves in the right
Wow.
direction for sure. I think we're making moves in the right
Wow.
direction, but it happens all the time. And I will share a personal anecdote because I am a CEO. And it is very rare. Well, I wouldn't say rare, but it's often that I do hear the words woman CEO connected to each other. I'm not just called CEO all the time. Or when I'm interviewed about how I got to the position of CEO, there's always a question about how does it feel to be a woman CEO, which is bothersome to me because you
Mm,
have this thing about aren't we supposed to judge people, as Martin said, on merits and how you got here? And yet there's always this big focus on
right.
the fact that I'm a woman and I happen to be a CEO. And the list goes on. when a man has all this
But
suave and
would
fluffy
you, what
skin,
would you answer when you get answered that question?
I always answer the same way. Why don't you ask me about how I got to be a CEO, period? And now not how I got to be a woman CEO or what it's like to be a woman CEO. And there are always
Unless
these
you're a
comparisons.
hermaphrodite.
But there are always these comparisons. And unfortunately, maybe, and I don't mean this as a judgment, maybe as men, you don't feel it very often, but I speak for all the women and even the LGBTQ community, especially the LGBTQ community. They get a lot of questions of how does it feel to be a gay boss? Or how does it feel to be. I've had somebody ask somebody else, and I was flabbergasted. And this other person asked an engineer, a software engineer, so what's it like to be a gay engineer? There are not a lot of gay engineers in the world. And I was like, wow. And
What?
so, yeah.
Wow.
And here on the Naked Under the
Crazy.
Table show, we're a lot more inclusive and open. But unfortunately, it is still a massive, massive problem in the world where whether we realize we're doing it intentionally or not, it does become something that it's
But
part of our lexicon,
that's the
right?
but that's the reason there are, I'm so thankful there are good shows, well written shows, I have to say, that take away that mentality, one of which is Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead. One of my favorite characters there, and the most deadliest and badass characters for me, is Carol. And she's this middle-aged mom, but
But
she's the
see, that's
scariest.
the point.
Everyone is afraid of her.
The
And I
reason
would
she's
love
so
that.
badass, the reason she's so badass is because she's not a hunky 30-year-old dude. You give her more badassery because
No,
she happens to be a middle-aged woman. If she was a hunky
no,
30,
the
40
point,
year old dude, you would have been like, ah, normal shit. And that's my point. It goes
it's
both ways,
normal. So,
right? The credit goes to her
mm,
being
it's a
a
double
middle-aged woman.
it's a double
It
edged
is.
sword, no?
Yeah. So the same
Mm.
goes. Like if this were an evil king in the story and not an evil queen, it wouldn't have punched
It would
through
be
as
like,
much.
it would be
Oh, he's a dude
commonplace.
though. He's
It would
allowed to
be
be an
commonplace.
asshole. We've had a lot of asshole
Yeah.
kings. But queens are supposed to
Mm.
be delicate and graceful and kind. And that all comes with a stereotype of women and power, women and strength, women and all of these other things. And I'm not just talking about women. Men also can't be soft. Men can't be kind. Whenever you hear about a man who stays home to take care of the kids and the wife is working, there is still a little bit of a stigma there, whether we like to admit it or not. And I'm not saying we're wrong for being that way. All I'm saying is there has to be a deliberate removal of those stereotypes and of those, what I like to call conjunctive words, right? Like you didn't have to explain, oh, that character is badass and she happens to be a middle aged woman. The real conversation should be that character is badass,
It's badass, period.
regardless, period, regardless,
I think the only way to do that is we have to merge the genders. The only way. The
unisex
only
stuff,
way. One gender.
androgyny. We'll have
The
androgynous Earth.
a new species of human beings.
And again, you heard it here first. Ladies and gentlemen, in the arts, what you need to start doing is creating androgynous characters, unidentifiable by gender or any other kind
Davao.
of attribute, whether male or female, and maybe we'll
But
have
you
a
know
new
what?
world order.
But you know what, Denise? I think it's getting there. I think a lot of, especially in comics, they're diversifying really so much. I know it can be a double edged sword, but at least they're trying. At least it's there, and maybe in the future, hopefully in the near future, it would be unquestionable.
So
Hopefully,
I guess I will bring back the things we were talking about earlier, or the word we were talking about earlier. Why are they doing that? Are they doing that because they want to show women who are capable and powerful and formidable? Or are they
I
doing
think
that because the
no, I
male
think
heroes are boring and done to death and they need a new kind of hero that's surprising
could
and
be,
different?
but I think more so than any. I think because a lot of the producers, the directors, the writers are women or other, whatever you're into. So
That is true too.
it's not prevalent male anymore. So one of the biggest example, one of the biggest executives in Disney is, what's her name? I forgot her name. is female. So
And that's
she's
the
a
point. You forgot her name. But
no.
anyway,
I'm bad. I'm bad with executive names. You know those guys, and no, so that's the reason for that, right? I mean, it's slowly, but then
so
again,
now that
you're
we're
right.
on
It's
the
still
topic
there.
of this men and women thing, not that I'm pitting men against women, not that I'm doing that, but especially as we're talking about a piece of literature and a character that was created at a time when it was commonplace to have certain archetypes for male roles and female roles. There's something interesting that many people know, but I don't think they realize the implication of. And that is that Snow White didn't actually defeat the evil queen on her own. When you think about it, the evil queen was acting much on her own, but Snow White had a lot of help. The seven dwarves and the prince, they helped her. I mean, even the huntsman that the queen sent to kill Snow White and come back with her heart and her liver and all of that, that huntsman let Snow White live and let her go in the end. And I find it interesting that Snow White got all this help from all these male characters, and the queen essentially was left by herself. And the one guy in the story that she asked to do stuff for her even betrayed her. So my question becomes, what do you guys think about how men pick certain women that they're going to fight for and which ones they're going to not fight for, or worse, the women's that they're going to shun? And I'm curious how you guys feel about that.
The damsel in distress trope,
Yes, like
di ba?
why is it that in
Mhm.
this story Snow White gets all of this assistance from all of these men and the evil queen doesn't get any? In fact, she gets betrayed by the one man that's quote unquote supposed to be on her side. Why do you think that
What
happens, and why do you think that's a story that keeps being told?
you know? What's weird? Why would the queen hire a huntsman when she has guards, when she has knights on her employ? I think the knights would have followed.
Because because he knew the forest, and that is the actual answer.
There
Because
you
he knew the
go.
forest.
Puede.
Yeah, yeah,
Puede. A tracker. She needed a
exactly.
tracker.
Tracker to hunt
Okay.
her down like an
She
animal, hence
needed
an huntsman. Yeah.
she needed no, she needed Aragorn. She needed Strider. A tracker. Hmm.
Martin, do you
but
have
yeah,
any particular, views on this? Because I found it quite interesting that most people don't actually latch on. They know it, but it doesn't really quite dig in that, oh, yeah, all the dudes helped Snow White, but none of the dudes helped the evil queen. And what does that say about mankind in general?
um, I don't know what it says about mankind in general. I mean, obviously, she's not likable. She's in the story. She is evil. She's deceiving. She's manipulative. She's jealous. It's basically what we talked about with the straw manning, right? Like you in the storytelling, you make the values very clear. I think it's the right way. Like you present a value proposition and you make it very clear. This is the good values to have, and this is the bad values. Not saying being naive is a good value. I don't necessarily see that as a value here. I
Hmm.
more see it like a warning in this story. Um, when we choose stuff to help, whether that be a woman or whether that is a goal that we dedicate our lives to or a cause of some sort, uh, that also depends on what you like what you value, and there are people that do support, I mean, that end up supporting very, very, if not evil by intent, then evil by execution, ideas or people or whatever it might be. um when it comes to the fairy tales, I don't really know what to answer. I mean, of course, it's a very simplistic way of
Yes.
scheduling out evil, good and evil, but it's a way to do it. I mean, I like it better. I like better movies like now, like Magnificent, for example, where you really, or Thanos, or the ones we talked about earlier. I like that a lot. I like that a lot better. I as we talked about earlier, for me, the evil characters really need to be relatable because you have to see how you could be that person, you know.
The reason, you
So
know what? Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, that's it. It's just it's a very simple way for me to do it. But yeah, why we've done it like it again? Like if you look at
You know,
and not to straw
you
man
know,
religion, but religion is also
right,
a
right.
very simplistic way of dividing what is good
Good and
from
evil. Yeah,
what is evil,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
You know, you know what the queen should have done? The queen should have used propaganda. I mean, she should have just destroyed Snow White's reputation. People would have. She's the queen, for crying out loud. She can just hire town criers to be like, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. The
That
maiden
is
Snow White stole.
all
Did
of this.
this?
Yeah,
Did she is evil? Release posters of Snow White that she's
yeah.
been doing this
She
and
could have
that.
contacted PETA and would have
She,
been like,
sh
"Dude, this Snow White is all about animal
yeah,
abuse,
she,
making
she,
them do all the work."
I saw
I
Snow.
really
Here ye, Snow White just fuck the chicken. Do something that will
yeah.
destroy her reputation. And you don't need a huntsman. She'll be driven out by villagers in pitchforks,
Man,
or just call
that's
her,
a
Hearing,
good point.
yeah, hearing what you
or
just
just
said,
call her a
Elsie,
witch.
just changed my worldview about this story. In that, to begin with, why did they need men to help in any regard, whether they were betrayed or not? I
Right,
mean, the evil queen was
right,
powerful in herself. Snow White obviously had
yeah.
capability because she could get animals to do stuff. I mean, why couldn't, in the same vein, Snow White command some crows and all of the bird folk to put out, the
No,
queen to
she's not.
death, or hire some
She's not
gnomes to
naman.
infiltrate the
She's
castle
not.
and eat the
Well,
queen?
in Snow White's defense, she's not naman vengeful, but the queen could have
No, but
had it easier.
yeah, but I guess the point I guess that I realized when you were talking is I think the problem here wasn't about which women men were choosing to fight for. The problem
Mm.
was that it was written in a way that women couldn't fight for their own damn selves. And that is a very, very
Right.
important point. Women, fight for
I
your
think it
own
was
damn
a trope
selves.
before. Right, right.
Get up your own damn pitchfork and go into the forest and hunt the girl
Right,
yourself. But
right,
but that is a
right,
wonderful,
right.
wonderful point. And before we go to our last question, ladies and gentlemen, I did announce earlier in the show that as part of our anniversary celebration, we are going to have a quick segment called the Ask Me Anything segment. And I think our producer Q has nominated one question. So we will have one question. Oh, I thought there was one. There was one. There was one. Okay, so I think the question that was sorry, it was privately messaged to me. I'm so sorry, Q. It was privately messaged to me because this person anonymously did not want to be shown as the person asking the question. And the question is for LC. Be
Well,
honest, all caps. What is your real age? And then in parenthesis, or I will stop listening to this podcast.
52.
Oh, come on. Elsie, come on, be honest. We don't want to lose an audience member. They're awesome to us. Come on. We're supposed to give back. So give back the
Uh
real age that you are. Yeah.
no,
Are you gonna cost
I'll
us
be
listeners?
if I do that, I'll be fired tomorrow. My boss will
Oh,
find out
oh,
my
okay.
age.
Why did you lie on your application?
Oh, of course I
Okay.
did.
Of course you did. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem with being a little bit overqualified. And this is also the problem we tackled earlier in the episode of age being a discriminatory thing. Sometimes when
It,
you have
it
age on
shouldn't
your
be.
resume, it shouldn't be, but
Yep.
again, it is the way of the
It
world.
is there. It is
All right.
there.
So, what I will do for this audience member, please do not stop listening to our podcast. I will message you privately Elsie's age, but you are not allowed to tell anybody. All right. Not allowed to tell anybody. It's interesting. I realized, this AMA format, we didn't think about how people would feel with their names getting put out there to ask us questions.
Right, right.
But thank you for that question. You know who you are. I will send you Elsie's age later.
Yeah, we'll post it.
You'll post it.
You will post it in the groups.
So now we enter the last question, and I'm going to deviate a little bit from the traditional Snow White story, whether you know it from Brothers Grimm or you know it from the ultra famous Disney version, the 1930s Disney version. Some of you may have already read this version of the story. It is actually a short story written by Neil Gaiman. And in Neil Gaiman's story entitled Snow Glass Apples, the evil queen is, as the show says, completely misunderstood. In the version of Neil Gaiman, Snow White is actually a vampire,
Mhm.
and the prince is a necrophiliac.
I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
The queen in this story is not called the evil queen. She's just called the queen. And she was actually good. And she was trying to stop the prince and the vampire from, you know, doing their thing because she didn't want them to make these evil vampire babies. But because of the seeming innocence and youth of both the prince and Snow White herself, the queen was not listened to by the townsfolk, and eventually she was burned alive. So
So
this is
so
the,
that they did propaganda against the queen.
exactly. That's why I found it so funny that Elsie brought that up earlier. So, unfortunately, the queen should have taken Elsie's advice in this particular story and did the propaganda first. I think she was trying, or, but basically, everybody loved Snow White and the prince as per the original telling. But in this case, nobody knew Snow White was a vampire and the prince was a necrophiliac. And that's why the queen was branded as bad and burned later on. In fact, in other versions of the stories, not Neil Gaiman's, the queen dies because she's made to dance in hot shoes until she burns herself
Yeah.
to death. So, my question to the
Horrible.
two boys to end: do you think this version of Neil Gaiman makes a more plausible story? Why or why not?
It makes a modern story. It has more emphasis in modernization in modern because vampires sell apparently, and it's Gaiman. Enough said. It's gonna sell.
And it's
To
also
be
it's
fair to
also a
Gaiman,
great couple, right? Like if you're gonna be with a vampire, it just makes good sense to be a
Right,
necrophiliac.
right, right, right,
that
right,
is true.
right.
But do credit
Well,
to Neil Gaiman. He came up with the story before vampires were a pop culture thing. But yes,
uh-huh,
Elsie,
uh-huh,
it does make it more
uh-huh.
modern, to be fair.
Well, it's a retelling, and it's nice to dissect it and put them together in a new light. I think that's pretty interesting. Uh, it is plausible. Why not? It's a story. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a fun read. I haven't read it, and I plan to. Denise, thanks for the bringing this up.
Just
I
that's
would
an
read.
LC kind of story, huh?
It is an Elsie kind of
Yeah,
story. It
yeah,
is an
yeah,
Elsie
yeah,
kind of story.
definitely.
And
I'm
I
not much
think
of
in
of a
Elsie's
gay man
version of
fan,
the
but
story, he's the Snow
uh,
White vampire. I think that's
no,
what.
my version, I'll stick to propaganda. My version is the queen smart, and she'll just hire town criers to just spread bad news about the
Yeah.
right. Technically, town criers back then were the social media of the Middle Ages. They were like Facebook, middle age Facebook.
That
Yeah,
is
you
true.
buy a couple of rounds at the local tavern, and
Right,
and you hire
That
a
is true.
scryer
tavern.
to
Right,
tell a
right.
story, and boom, man, you got it going
Right,
already.
right, right,
That is
right. The
true.
scribe's name was the book of faces. According to the scroll of faces, Snow White is hereby declared as by witchery, blasphemer, and
That's
she'd be
true. That would
probably
have
burned
worked
in the
back then.
stake.
That would have
That
worked
would
back
have
then.
worked instantly, instantly. And hello, you're the queen. Whatever you say is law. So
That is true. Martin, do
I
you
don't
think
know
that
what the
this
hassle's all about.
version of the story kind of has more plausibility to it? That maybe the queen was exactly, she wasn't evil at all. She just had the worst luck ever, because these young, beautiful, charming people, you know, she couldn't hold a candle to them. Do you think that's more plausible in a sense?
I don't know if I would say it's more plausible, but it definitely is plausible, and I like the the like I like the theme of the story because it plays on the exact opposite area of the spectrum where we're talking about, like we've talked about how like this kind of jealousy and the naivety of young beauty and the jealousy of older, or the older queen and whatnot. But this kind of puts the things are not always what they seem kind of spectral on it. Like
Right.
you meet loads of things in life that looks good and speaks good and try to act good, only to eventually turn out to be something entirely different,
You're rotten, yeah.
right? So in terms of the narrative, I think it's definitely a useful narrative, and I think it would be a cool narrative to see. I don't know if in more stories, but it's definitely a cool narrative that to have played out in one of these very famous fairy tales. I'm sure if we really look for it, I'm sure we can find a fairy tale of older kind that kind of have those undertones. But I do really like the narrative, and of course it's plausible. But if it's more plausible and less plausible, it's difficult to answer. Like they wrote it the way they wrote it, right?
Right.
And Neil Gaiman wrote it a different way. But I like both narratives, and fair to say, I like the Gaiman narrative as well, because I think it's something that people tend to be more blind to than actual, like, good and evil, like these kind of concealed and more manipulative ways of kind of going around it and manipulating and taking advantage of people. I think people tend to be more blind to that. So maybe if more stories were told like this, people would be less blind. I would be less blind.
I totally agree. I think one of the reasons why I love this story, and for those of you listening, if you guys want to read it, it's called Snow Glass Apples. One of the reasons I particularly love about this story is, or one of the things I particularly love is all the characters have agency. They all have a reason for being. The prince is not just there as a white knight savior. He has a carnal need to fulfill. The queen has almost a noble thing to kind of a noble mission to do. And even Snow White in this version of a story has a survival instinct that she needs to abide by. As a vampire, she needs to reproduce. And giving all of these characters agency actually makes you understand the point that old fairy tales don't do today, that the new fairy tales are trying to embark on. Each character is not entirely evil or entirely good. And every person
Yeah.
needs to have some form of context, character reference or arc, and more importantly, the agency that we're looking for in
Mhm.
all of the characters, not just
It's
the
the
heroes, yeah, or
it's
the
the
hero villain.
why. It's the why.
It's the
Why
why.
are they
And
doing this?
for all characters.
It's
In fact,
it's
I would love to see a story where the seven dwarfs also get their own sense of agency up, and they're not just support characters in a story. No more sidekicks, guys. Maybe we should stop having sidekicks and everybody just has their own
Oh,
character
but
arc, reason for being.
everybody can't be the main character either, right? That's
They
gonna make for a very confusing plot.
Well, I would
Well,
argue Game of Thrones has two main characters, but many of the
tama.
characters in the Game of
Yeah.
Thrones series have a lot of well-written character arcs, and you root for heroes that are not titular heroes in
Uh-huh.
that series. So I challenge all the
But that's
creators.
also a lot longer than, like, the Game of Thrones also has a lot more space to tell the story of the characters than, for example,
That
the
is
fairy
true.
tale did.
Um,
Right?
and so there are many ways to do it. And, as Sting once said, the format of the story doesn't matter. It's the storyteller's choice. I
Sting
take
said that.
what, yeah, Sting said that. I take what an author would use as a theme and spin it out into 300 pages, and I take it as a theme and condense it into 3 minutes. So really, as
Nice,
a creator,
nice,
it's up to you. It's up to you.
nice, idol. Nice,
So on that
nice.
note, I wanted to thank everybody. This is the first episode of many this month, our anniversary month. And again, we are reduxing all of our top series. So next week's episode will not be about misunderstood monsters anymore. It will be another episode of one of our top series in the past 12 months. So stay tuned for that. Again, Monday night on the Naked Under the Table show on Facebook at 10 p.m. If you want to catch all of our past shows, you can go to Spotify, Anchor FM, all of our favorite podcasting and streaming platforms. Don't forget to join the Nuts group, where we actually have a community of people that share all of these crazy, insightful, sometimes debatable, questionable concepts. We'd love to have you join us. It's a wonderful community. And on behalf of my co hosts, I hope today you learned once again to not take things at face value, to not brand things as stereotypes or archetypes, but to look a little bit deeply, if you will, at what might make a character the way that they are. Because you never know, they might just be a little bit misunderstood. This has been the Naked Under the Table show. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.